Hey everybody, welcome back to Paranormal Blah. This is our second episode, and Dee and I are going to be covering a topic that pops up in the news every now and again. Let's put it that way, and that would be Bigfoot. I myself believe Bigfoot could be real, only we haven't seen any actual evidence that tells me that he is, or she, or it, or whatever. I think D, on the other hand, might think otherwise.
Absolutely not. I don't believe in him at all.
You don't believe it exists at all, or just the fact that we haven't seen anything convincing?
I don't think Bigfoot, the way people believe that what it is, the cryptozoological, logical creature or whatever it is real. I think it's misidentified creature of something else, possibly.
I think we're seeing something else that people are calling
I
Bigfoot.
honestly think it's a bear, or even a human.
And I think a lot of people, general public, want to believe that Bigfoot's out there. Of course, there's, quote, convincing evidence, but like
Planted
Dee
evidence.
said, yeah, planted evidence, no kidding.
I just don't buy it.
Like Dee said, it might just be misidentified. You know, just like the last episode when we covered some ghosts, and basically, ghosts is a general term. We talked about how I lost my train of thought. We talked about, I don't know where I was going with this. Okay. Well, it's misidentified. Ghosts are misidentified as well. There's plenty of quote evidence out there, just like Bigfoot. The reason we're covering Bigfoot is because they're just like ghosts, and for some people, the skeptics especially, there's no evidence that makes them believe. But of course, we have photos and random video clips that are shakier, than Michael J. Fox with a cup of coffee. But
What evidence is there besides video? That's what I'm saying. I mean,
yes,
video that's shaky, not clear, almost always debunked, someone in a suit,
Yeah.
whatever. But other than that, the evidence is the stupid footprint.
right.
They sell those molds.
Yeah, I think we have a picture up of a guy that's holding what looks like a plaster cast of the Bigfoot, and it looks way too fake, like an actual footprint, like Bigfoot walked out of the Pacific Northwest and just stood in a plaster tub for the guy. But there are hundreds of them, of course, and they all look a little different, and I'm sure it's people trying to make it look more authentic than it really is. But like Dee said, you could probably whittle a foot out of wood and plant these things all over the place in the muddy ground in the spring of anywhere in the country, or North America for that matter. Yeah.
Not to mention natural footprints
Yep.
from a Kodiak bear. They have matched those up countless times. And there's going to be people out there that argue that because the Bigfoot has toes and all these things. Well, if you look at a Kodiak bear's footprint, it looks very similar. And you have to consider that they're sliding evolved. And like you said, it's not going to just stand still.
Right, and we watched that show one time that showed us that.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was debunking Bigfoot or if it was just some other random
It was a Bigfoot
show we
I-
watched, but there was a person that actually set out to study the fact that a Kodiak bear wandering around in the muck could produce a plaster cast almost exactly the same as 90% of the ones that Bigfoot that people have in their offices or in museums all over the place. So
Throw a picture up of a Kodiak bear footprint.
Yeah, well,
just so that people can
yeah,
see
we'll
it.
throw a picture up so you can kind of see and you can tell us what you think. But the one from the show, it was the most convincing. I mean, we're looking at a picture right now, and that picture is huge. Like there's
That
a
is-
guy holding a Kodiak bear foot. And the thing is probably twice the size of his head.
Oh yeah.
So
Look at that.
I mean,
That looks like, toes.
yeah, it's very convincing. So we're gonna hit up on a bunch of the stuff with Bigfoot and obviously the Kodiak bear footprints and then things like that are gonna come into play. So Let's just keep going here. We're gonna just talk about like where does Bigfoot come from? Like where did the first Bigfoot story come from? And Dee and I found a couple different stories, and I did a simple Google search, and I found, according to a website I was on, I don't remember. I think it was the Sasquatch Chronicles. They showed that the oldest account in North America was back in 986 AD. It was when Leif Erikson and his men, explored North America, and they reported seeing large hairy beasts. And witness accounts are I don't know. For me, it's difficult because the accounts are always like in a location where your peripheral vision plays tricks on you and stuff like that. Plus,
Pretty sure they didn't wear glasses back
yeah,
then.
probably didn't have glasses or binoculars. I don't know. I mean, but Leif Erikson and his people, they referred to Bigfoot as a skell ring, and in Norse terms, it sounds strange, but it's really just, it kind of means barbarian. And the first thing that pops in my mind is, well, Norsemen are hairy as well.
Rollo
Yeah,
from Vikings.
no kidding. They just wander around with long hair and beards and axes. And I mean, if one was 6.5 feet tall, I would have thought it was Bigfoot too. If it was 50 feet away in a wooded area. So are they describing someone of their own kind, or what's actually going on there? But that was one of the oldest accounts in North America, and there's other descriptions. There's other types of Bigfoot. Here we just call it Bigfoot, and we'll get into where that term was coined later on. But you always every Bigfoot show and everything else that you hear, they talk about something tall and hairy, and that seems to be the only description. But Dee did some digging on the internet and found there's a lot of other descriptions of the Bigfoot.
Oh yeah. Well, we have in China the Yeren, which actually isn't as tall as the standard Bigfoot we have here, where the people describe him 10 feet tall, 14 feet tall, whatever. He was always more around 6 feet, but in China that is considered pretty big.
Yeah, 6-footer in China, that's an oddball.
The Yowie in Australia, that one had longer hair, and that one was reported to eat meat, so it supposedly would kidnap you and take you as a food source.
Again, it sounds like some story made up to keep the kids from traveling too far
True.
from the house.
However, the interesting thing with the Yowie is that I read that it goes all the way back to Aboriginal history.
So it's
and
pretty
the cave
old.
paintings and everything.
Okay.
So
Okay.
they're dealing with something, whether it's, I don't think it's mythological, that's the thing.
It's not Bigfoot.
I mean, we know that, what do you call those things? The mammoths aren't alive anymore, but would you think they're mythological? No.
Right.
Either it's a dinosaur.
Yeah, I would.
If we never found the bones, though, it would be a mythological creature. There's the Mande Barung, which is around the northeast India and Bangladesh region. That one is the only one that really, its habitat is really different, where it's in subtropical forests. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense if you consider the area that they're in. The one thing that's common of all of them is they're always in a mountainous forest area, except for that one.
Yeah, and in a lot of places where typical people can't get to without.
Let me put this out there. It's a lot of places where there's bear.
Right, and again,
Just saying.
the bear.
There is the Baran, I can't even pronounce this one. It's Bar Manu, which is in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and it's kind of similar to the Yeren in China, where it's not quite as big, but it's there. And again, when I first saw that, I thought, well, that's got to be in a desert area. Nope, mountain.
And the thing is, being over there, with being so deserty, and even mountainous, but mostly rock and sand and
But they don't have bear,
not
do they?
trees. I would think I don't know.
I don't think they
we'd
do.
have to look and see. I have no clue. I wouldn't even know. But the thing is, in a location like that, it still sounds like something that would stand out like a sore thumb.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it wouldn't be like
Well-
everybody is very similar, like in China too, similar size, similar, I mean, you're recognizable. So when you see something that's not typical, it stands out. So are they really seeing a Bigfoot or whatever they call it, or is it just something else?
Probably some crazy hobo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where a lot of homeless people live, is out in the forests and things.
They're probably combing the desert like they do in Spaceballs.
Yeah, that would be awesome. The cutest one is the Arain Pendek, and that is a little guy. It's the only Bigfoot reportedly said to be small. So I describe him, I just call him a hobbit.
So,
Because that's what it reminded me of. He's between, or she, whatever, 30 and 60 inches tall, and he's, again, in a mountainous forest habitat in Indonesia. It's the only small Bigfoot,
right.
if you want to call it that.
Sure.
And then the most famous of all is probably the Yeti. Or the abominable snowman, which is, of course, in the Himalayas. That one goes back to the original first ever recorded sighting of a creature like this.
Was in the Himalayan region.
It predates Buddhist religion, so that's 600 BC.
And they don't lie.
Of course not. They're very noble.
So
they don't
if
eat
one
meat
of them
either.
saw Bigfoot or the Yeti or the abominable snowman, people would tend to believe it.
They would believe it, but that doesn't mean that they're right. I mean, it's not like they study science
It's
there.
still a story. You know, just a story.
You know what I think about is the Iceman that they found frozen, and he ended up being really old, predates all this crap, whatever. And he ends up just being like a Caucasian, and they can't figure out how he got there. He's just really, really old, primitive tools and everything. You can look it up.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's really good. I think it's on Netflix, and I watched the whole thing. And I thought to myself, now you have a guy that, I mean, as a Caucasian man, he's got the facial hair and the chest hair and all that stuff that's just grown out and long, and he's wearing natural furs to be warm, and he's crawling around in the mountains. And he was murdered up there. That's how he was found, with like an arrow in his back. But the whole thing is, I just imagine you see something you've never seen before, and again, and he was like 6 foot or whatever. That's going to be tall to them, especially when they're around small. I shouldn't just assume that they're all small. I'm sure there's some big, tall monks, but I'm just saying, I just think it's a misconception. Kind of like when a little kid sees someone that has a deformity and thinks it's a monster. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
So right there's a bunch of different descriptions of basically the same thing. Of course, different regions of the world, they're going to have their own stories, they're going to have their own descriptions, and that's the whole point of it. But are they actually seeing the same thing? Now, we watched, I believe it was BuzzFeed Unsolved.
Yeah.
And those guys are pretty good. Obviously a believer and a skeptic, but this time the believer was the skeptic when they went to look for Bigfoot. And it was kind of interesting because the first thing I thought was, well, he believes in ghosts. Why doesn't he believe in Bigfoot? But like Dee said, is it a mythical thing? Is it supernatural? Not really. We're probably looking at a huge bear. Is it a species?
I still think that.
Right? It can't be. It cannot be the same Bigfoot we see all over the entire world. So it would have to be a certain species of something that is showing up in different parts of the world, which really makes it less believable. Especially since we haven't found jack crap for evidence other than the stupid videos that we see from 1967 that show a guy in an ape suit. So that is very interesting, at least for how far back the story goes. That kind of interested me. I didn't really know that. I read on the Skeptics Dictionary that, you know, the term Bigfoot came from a guy playing a trick on people that he knew. He was a regular prankster, according to his children and his wife, and he had a Bigfoot mold actually made out of wood by a friend of his, and used it to make impressions in the mud on his construction sites that he worked at to scare people. So they believe that back in, I want to say it was 1958, that this happened. So this was before that typical 1967 film by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin in Northern California. And the thing is, the local news took that little prank that Ray Wallace was doing and ran with it. And in the story, in Humboldt County, they just termed what they were talking about as Bigfoot. And most people or most places or resources you look up believe that that's where the legend of Bigfoot started in North America. It's hard to say.
Because it was a big footprint.
Huh?
Because it was a big footprint.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, it was Sasquatch
yes,
in America.
it was a big foot.
Right.
So it was real simple just to call it that. And yeah, and Ray Wallace is dead now, of course, died in 2002, so you can't go ahead and ask him. And his brother, but his mom had also talked about how her husband was a prankster and stuff like that. And I'll show a picture of Ray Wallace's nephew with the carved foot. It looks like basically a slipper or a flip-flop that looks just like the Bigfoot castings that we've seen around. So I'll put a picture up of that and you can kind of take a look at that. And even at one time, you know, there was a press release out that offered $1 million for a baby Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Well, where's the baby Bigfoot? D, where did we say that was? Where's the small one?
Oh, the ring pendek?
Whatever one is the smallest one.
Yeah, that's in Indonesia.
So there's the only place that we talk about a small Bigfoot, yet everybody wants to see a baby. It makes sense that this thing is real. There's going to have offspring, and they're not going to come out at 8 feet tall. I guess you just never know. So,
well, other than bear, though, sometimes I'm wondering too if it's like there's a genetic disorder that people can get, hypertrichosis, where they have excess hair on their face and body, and usually you don't actually hear any scientists talk about it unless they're talking about a werewolf, which we will talk about in the future because we live in Wisconsin where there's the Bray Road Beast.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm showing you a picture. This is a little girl, and her hair is trimmed.
yeah,
Now imagine if you didn't trim that.
it doesn't look like a girl to me.
It is though. She's wearing a dress.
I'm saying if it was out in the wild somewhere, it would probably make me think it was something else.
You know, here's a baby.
Yeah, and it makes sense, and we've seen shows on this topic before, so this is also a possibility. So picture this type of disease. I'm not going to really call it a disease. It's not like the people they're just hairy. But picture a guy that's 6'5".
Yeah.
You know, like the guy, like people I work with, or even
Sure. My stepdad.
you know, Dee's stepfather is quite tall. If he had this disorder, he would look just like a fucking Bigfoot.
He would. And the thing is too is if you go back in the day, or even to a country that isn't so acceptable of different looks and things like that, these people were outcasts. That's why they went into the circus. That's the only place they were accepted back in the day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So that's very interesting. Well, that is it for part number 1 of the Bigfoot episode. We talked about a lot of information, and we would like to hear what you think about Bigfoot, so just leave all your thoughts in the comments below. The next part will include a screencast of the top 10 most convincing videos of Bigfoot evidence, and it's quite exciting. Just click on the episode that just popped up on your screen, and that will take you to the next part. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for another episode of Paranormal Blah coming very soon.